This is an open letter to, as usual, Mr. Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk. Uh, and the rest of the folks who are might be interested. Some time ago, I was going to a technical college or technical school, attending a technical school some short while ago in 2020. And we had this teacher, that instructor that basically, on one hand, he considered himself MAGA. Uh, he liked President Trump, Mr. Trump, and he, loved America. And on one hand, he was all Trump and MAGA and make America great again. But on the other hand, he would encourage his student, us, well, not me, but the rest of the class. He would encourage his students that, yes, you should be ready that to go and defend Taiwan against the Chinese. And most of the time I was just, internally smiling. I was smiling internally because he was an instructor of, a very, Joe the Plumber, an equivalent to Joe the Plumber. And he, didn't realize the contrast of these two. And he just, is a Joe the Plumber. An average a guy who can't make sense of what's going on around him, and is just manipulated when some individuals in position of influence and power inflame his emotions. He gets manipulated easily, and so he doesn't realize that he's actually he has two very contrasting views in that, they don't overlap at all. They're totally in conflict. On one hand, make America great again, and on the other hand, we have let's prepare ourselves to go defend Taiwan against China. So he didn't realize, and I realized that many people don't realize it, and that's by design. So I don't have a horse in this game, and I might be wrong, but hear me out. By design, it seems, Uncle Sam's managers have been skittish or apprehensive or very shy about declaring that they are expanding and maintaining an empire. It's been 100 years. It's been 100 years that Uncle Sam's managers have been skittish about calling a spade a spade. They beat around the bush with all sorts of, names, coalition of the willing, and our partners, and our friends, and our allies. they have gone to a lot of much extent to not call a spade by using all these similar words but not really similar words, because they didn't want to admit that they are they're maintaining and expanding an empire, which is what Uncle Sam's managers currently are the proud owners of. It's an empire. And just I give you one reason why it's an empire, and you should, figure out the rest of the reasons for yourselves from the evidence. One evidence that it's an empire and it's not a coalition or a partnership or allies. One example of it is that one stark reason for it is that these allies or these coalition of partners and NATO and this and that, you can't find a single, for example, Spain is part of the allies, right? The allies, Spain, just Spain. It's a part of NATO and it's part of the allies or whatever. Spain, Bulgaria, Romania, these are all, you know, have become part of NATO and part of allies and coalition of willings. And whenever Uncle Sam's managers, whenever they decide to go kick some ass somewhere, they find these folks and, you know, these allies and they go and kick some ass. But one thing is very clear, that it doesn't matter what you call them, none of these motherfuckers have a base in Uncle Sam's land, but Uncle Sam has a base in every one of those lands. Spain and England and Germany and Romania and Bulgaria and go on. So what does it say when one of the partners has a base in every one of the other partners' lands, but those other partners, none of them have a base in the big partner's land? That's not a coalition. That's not a collection of allies. That's an empire. Let's call the spade what it is. It's a spade. It's an empire. So Uncle Sam's managers are the proud owners of an empire. Something that, you know, the founding fathers never imagined, never wanted. Founding fathers, you know, they were very, you know, enlightened people, enlightened, progressive people, and they just wanted to out of being British colony themselves, and they were happy just not being a colony. They never imagined becoming a colonizer, much less being the managing partner of a coalition of colonizers, i.e. NATO, or the main owner, the proud owner of an empire which expands 7 continents. So the problem arises from this, that they have been shy about calling what they have. The Uncle Sam's managers have been shy about calling what they have an empire, which it is. And now, what is the problem here? Like I used to say, and now Mr. John Stortz says, the problem. What is the problem here? The problem is that when you have an empire, and what is the contrast between, you know, having an empire and being MAGA, which is the true contrast, is that the MAGA people say that a country is enough for us. We want a country, we want the well-defined borders, and this country is enough for us, the citizens. These are what the MAGA Republicans are saying, and a lot of independent voters too. What the other side is saying, you can actually call them the imperial side, which is basically 90% of the Democratic Party and 70% of the Republican Party. You can call them the imperial side. Some people call them the neocons, and that's supposedly short for neoconservative. But in reality, neocon should stand for neocolonialists. This is the imperial side. 90% of Democrats are on the imperial side, are the neocolonialists, as well as 70% of the Republicans in the Republican Party establishment are neocolonialists. And this is the contrast. The MAGA people are saying a country is good enough for us, let us be. And the neocolonialists are saying that no, we have a responsibility to keep the empire going and expanding it. And that this is exactly the contrast in which the Republicans are saying, the MAGA people are saying that hold the southern border, we don't want newcomers. But the imperialist side is saying that no, forget about the southern borders, they are part of the empire already. Those people who are coming from the south of the border are part of the empire already, those countries. And even those who are coming from other countries that are not part of the empire, supposedly Venezuela, Iran, or whatever, they still want those citizens of those shedholes. They want to be part of the empire. So let them come in. Obviously, they're here. They want to be part of our empire. They don't want to be part of those shedholes. So let them be. But they are holding, but the imperial side are holding the Ukrainian line because that's about expansion of the empire. That's, in direct conflict with the neighboring, with the neighbor, which is Russia. And the imperial side, the Democrats and 70% of Republic, 90% of Democrats, 70% of Republicans are, want to keep the periphery of the empire and want to expand the periphery of the empire. So to include Ukraine as well. So this is the real contrast. One side wants a country, is happy with just having a country, and the other side wants to keep an empire. And frankly, although I myself, I'm not at ease with the MAGA people, because I have a feeling if there are no consequences, they probably would rather shoot me on sight. Because the MAGA people, because they have a specific definition of what is America, and in their definition, probably people who look like me don't fit in America. But anyway, beside that, they're not, they don't like people like me. Beside that, the reality is simple. Why the MAGA has started and why it's spreading, and a lot of independent people are also, are tilt that way. For the simple reason, in an empire, right, the people who actually pay for the cost of expansion and maintenance of an empire are the average folks. The average folks are the people who is the source of funds to maintain and expand the empire through their taxes. But they are not the beneficiary. The average folks, which is 90% of the population or 95% of the population, are the average folks. They pay the cost of maintenance and expansion of the empire, but they are not the beneficiaries of the expansion and the maintenance of the empire. The beneficiaries, the real beneficiaries, the absolute maximum beneficiaries of the maintenance and expansion of any empire are the rich corporations and rich individuals of that empire. So I give you an example. The people pay the cost to the average folk, the 95% supposedly, pay the cost of expanding the empire into Iraq. Okay, there is some lives lost, there is some casualties, some, a lot of costs with regards to equipment and all of that, which comes out of tax money, which buys those equipment to go and expand the empire into Iraq and Syria. The average folks of folks, through their taxes and through their manpower, pay the expense of expanding the empire into new places. But they are not the real beneficiary of this expansionism. The beneficiaries of expanding the empire would be Walmart, for example, and all the corporations who sell products in a Walmart store. because once you have a new territory, once Uncle Sam's managers have a new territory under their empire, Walmart can easily go in and put up stores, and all the corporations which sell products in Walmart also benefit, because if Walmart puts up 50 new stores in Iraq, or specifically in Baghdad, if Walmart puts up 50 new stores over there, all those corporations have 50 new outlets to sell their microwaves and toasters and widgets. So these corporations and wealthy individuals benefit from the expansion of the empire, but the average folks, they don't put up shop in Baghdad. They don't, get any extra benefit because Baghdad is now part of the empire. They don't get any of that. But they paid the price of going in and expanding the empire with their lives and their tax money for the equipment that was necessary to flatten the land over there and subdue the people. So the main beneficiaries of expansion and maintenance of an empire are wealthy individuals and wealthy corporations. All of them. Hershey's and Mars's and Raytheon's and Chevron's. The second beneficiary, which do also benefit from the bigger empire, are the politicians. Because those corporations, if they make, for every $100 extra they make because the empire has expanded, they may throw a couple of dollars in the way of the politician. Throw a bone for the politician as well, because the politician is the one who is supposedly in charge of the empire, maintenance and expansion of the empire. So for every $100 that the corporation make extra because of the expansion of the empire, between $1 to $10 they may throw back at the politicians. So they also benefit, the politicians also benefit from expanding the empire and maintaining the empire. The next class, who don't benefit much from expansion and maintenance of empire, but they do have a job as a result of expansion and maintenance of the empire, are the civil servants. The civil servants, the bureaucracy that's needed to expand and maintain an empire, needs a lot of people. So a lot of civil servants owe their jobs as in the government, any government. At this point, I might as well be talking about the British Empire in the last century or 2 centuries ago. The civil servants have a job with the government, a well-paying job, working for the government, trying to expand or maintain the empire. And these civil servants, they don't get any special perks. It's just a job for them that providing. For example, a Pentagon, if you have an empire, you need a Pentagon. But if you're just having a country, you don't need a Pentagon. One Dagon or 2 Dagon would do. You don't need a Pentagon. You see what I'm saying? It's just a matter of scale. And with that, with scale goes budget. Pentagon has such a huge budget because it's trying to maintain and expand an empire. State Department, the same thing. CIA, NSA, FBI, all these organizations, if there is an empire, they need so many people to manage and maintain and expand it. But if it's a country of 350 million people, they can do with 1/5 of the budget or 1/10 of the budget. CIA doesn't need the budget that it has. It can do with 1/10 of the budget because it needs 1/10 of the personnel. So my State Department, CIA, FBI, the military, all of them. It's basically, imagine Pentagon suddenly becomes an organization with similar budget as the Coast Guard. so because it has the function of only maintaining one country with 350 million people with a specific, specific borders. It's not a huge enterprise. It's not a global enterprise. It's supposed to manage one country, so it can do with 1/10 of the budget or 1/5 of the budget. So my point is this: the absolute beneficiaries of the empires are the corporations, wealthy corporations and wealthy people. The the people who make some extra money, some extra wealth because of the empire are the politicians. And the civil servants just have a job because there is an empire and the empire needs a large bureaucracy instead of a small bureaucracy. So they just have a job with the government because of the empire. In and in reality, these civil servants, uh, they can always, if this, if there is not an empire and only a country, these civil servants can always find jobs in private sectors. So civil servants are not, you know, don't lose much if empire goes away, and there is an emphasis on the country, because they don't lose much because they just find a job with the private sector instead of trying to manage and maintain a large governmental bureaucracy because it's an empire to run. So that's why one of the reasons that you see a lot of corporations are in bed with the neo-colonialists, or as you call them, neoconservatives, or 90% Democratic Party and 70% Republican Party. The reason all the corporations are full scale behind these folks is because these folks are expanding and maintaining the empire, which benefits them the most. Now, the Trump people, or Bernie Sanders people, I want to say, because that's why you see Trump and Bernie Sanders basically have the same people behind them. These are the people who, the average citizens. And you're wondering why these two are such a contrast. Bernie Sanders, Trump, they're such a contrast. Why would the followers of one be so willing, ready, and able to follow the other if the other one is kicked out of the Democratic Party or Democratic race, as Bernie Sanders was? Is because these are the average citizens who have waken up and have realized that while they're paying the cost, they have realized, first, there is an empire; second, that the average citizens are paying the main cost of expanding and maintaining the empire, and then realize that the large corporations are the real beneficiaries of the maintaining and expanding the empire. So the average citizens, some of them, these 30%, have woken up and say, okay, we don't want to pay the expense of expanding the empire. But still, some of them, like this, this teacher that I had in this college, basically are not sure. They like MAGA, but then they get confused and they say, okay, your protection of Taiwan is also our job. Get prepared, get ready. It's sort of like, you don't understand, my friend. You're either an empire and you want to protect Taiwan, which is, you consider as part of your empire, or you're MAGA and you want to, keep the shit within the borders and worry about only the border and stop spending blood and treasure in order to expand the empire or maintain the empire, such as Taiwan, which Taiwan is part of. So that lack of education, lack of knowledge leads to that, having two contrasting beliefs in being not having two contrasting ideas in your mind. You can have two contrasting ideas, but in your mind, but you can't, having the ideas is one thing, but being an adamant proponent of two conflicting ideas is the joke. But so here's the thing. The reality is all empires end up in this position. The British Empire ended up at the same position. The French Empire ended up at the same position. it comes a point in which the citizen can no longer pay for the expenses of the empire, and the corporations always find a way not to pay taxes. So when I say the corporations are the main beneficiaries, because the corporations always find a way not to pay taxes, which goes towards maintenance and expansion of the empire. So they still always remain the most beneficiaries, and the average folks, their tax money, instead of going towards roads and bridges and schools and universities, that's one of the reasons, for example, that when empire was new and wasn't really an empire in the 1940s and 50s, universities were either free or cheap, or very free or very cheap in United States. And because and as years have gone, because at that time the government was taking some of these taxes and giving it to universities to teach people something. But as the years has gone on, the government has stopped spending the tax money for universities in order to educate the population, have stopped paying the tax money for roads and bridges or maintaining the country, and has collected all these taxes and sent them to the edges of the empire in order to expand the empire or expand the bureaucracies that are needed to maintain the empire, such as the Pentagon and the State Department and the security agencies such as CIA and FBI and NSA and this and that and the other and the other and the other and the other. So this is my point, that it has to be clear what is the real contrast here. When Mr. Elon Musk says, why is American politicians, Uncle Sam's managers, in other words, are more worried about the borders of Ukraine than borders of United States? Well, the reason is simple, because all those countries from in the south, in Central America, Uncle Sam's managers believe that those are already part of the empire. Those are already part of the empire, so they don't worry about them. But Ukraine there's a still question that could Ukraine be part of the empire or not. So we have to fight the Russians to make sure Ukraine is part of the empire. And there is simple, example of it, of how you can tell. I had a friend, a friend who went to El Salvador for some, there was a wedding and he was invited, and he went to El Salvador, I believe, about a year ago or so. And he told me that he's seen all of Uncle Sam's corporations are present and doing business in El Salvador, like Pizza Hut and Little Caesars and all of them, and Domino's and Walmart and Home Depot. I don't know, but the point is this: he's saying that all of these corporations Uncle Sam's corporations have an outlet in El Salvador. It's sort of like, so that's why the neocolonialists in the politics of Uncle Sam are not worried about El Salvador's citizens coming to the United States or American citizens going to El Salvador, because El Salvador is already part of the empire. For the simple fact that it's allowing U.S. corporations to open franchises there. For that simple reason, that the U.S. corporations are allowed, and wherever U.S. corporations go, U.S. banking system goes. Unless the Uncle Sam's banking system is not operational there, in that destination country, Uncle Sam's corporations will not set foot there, because they only Uncle Sam's corporations will only deal with Uncle Sam's banks, Wells Fargo and J.P. Morgan Chase and Bank of America. these banks have to be there first, and then Uncle Sam's corporations will open franchises there. So, have you noticed recently, since suddenly Russia decided that they don't want to be part of the empire, uh, clearly didn't want to be part of the empire. Here's the thing: why Russia was never invited to be part of NATO? Russia, even after Cold War, Russia was invited to just sit in on NATO meetings as an observer, not as a participant. Russia was never invited to join NATO. Why? For the simple reason that there is no NATO. There is Uncle Sam's empire, and those other countries part of NATO are just, they like to call them coalition or partners or allies or all kinds of other words that I previously mentioned, but they're really, assets of Uncle Sam, because none of those countries, no NATO country has a military base in Uncle Sam's land, but Uncle Sam has a military base, one or more military bases in every one of those other countries. So they're assets in Uncle Sam's empire. The Russians were not willing to allow, Uncle Sam's military bases on the territory that they control. So therefore, there was never a chance of Russia joining NATO. Well, and of course, Uncle Sam would not allow a Russian military base on his territory. So there was never going to be a NATO partnership offered to Russia, because NATO is not an equal partnership. So that's the point. The point is, there are imperialists and then there are countrymen. The MAGA people are happy with the country. They want their taxes to be spent on their own country, because for a long time their own country was with neglect. Their own bridges and schools and universities have been neglected, and Uncle Sam's managers have pushed more and more of the expenses of running a country to the people themselves. So the people who pay taxes, this taxes goes towards expansion and maintenance of empire, but also the same people have to save money to pay for education and to pay for for healthcare, and to pay for everything else. They're paying the taxes, but also they have to privately they have to pay for other expenses that most other countries, those other expenses are mostly covered by taxes. And that's why the Europeans have had a better time than Americans all during the past 100 years, because the Europeans have not spent so much. Their taxes have gone towards their healthcare. That's why the fucking British have the National Health Service. The French have a good pension plan and good healthcare and good this and good that, because they haven't been spending money in maintaining and expanding an empire. For the past 100 years, the fucking French and the fucking British haven't had an empire, so they have concentrated on their own people, and they have made life better for their own citizens in Europe. And the main cost of expanding of Uncle Sam's empire has been on the backs of Uncle Sam's citizens. You see where I'm going with this? So solution is, I hope these imperialists, which is 90% of Democratic Party and 70% of Republican Party, I hope these imperialists understand that it's a dead end, this empire business, because you're going to go the way of the fucking British if you insist on maintaining the empire and expanding the empire or maintaining them. You're going to go to the way the British. You're going to follow through with the way all empires have followed through. That you overexpand your resources until the breaking point, and then you have an internal fall or internal revolution or an internal collapse, and the whole thing, while you're busy maintaining the peripheries, you have a lot of issues internally, and the whole thing falls, the whole house of cards falls down. So it would be a good idea to, you don't want Trump, you don't like Trump, fine, but the idea of, okay, let's cut back on the expense of maintaining and expanding an empire, let's drastically cut back on that, and let's spend most of the tax money that we collect from these poor bastards on themselves, on their education, on their healthcare, on their housing, on this and that. And you can't do both, because you're going to cause a big inflation, especially now that the rest of the world have decided that they don't want to buy any more dollars, and they want to have their own currencies and do their business with their own currencies. You can't continue printing as you have. So you can't have both an empire and a well-functioning country. Because remember, for example, the British were extremely poor. The British citizens were extremely poor while the British were doing imperial business. The Dickensian time was the time that the fucking British were doing Australia and Americas and South America and North America and Africa at the same time that they had all those fucking colonies. They had an empire. The British citizens were living at the standards of that Mr. Charles Dickens describes in his books. Because exactly the same thing. The citizens are paying for the expansion of the empire, but very few are benefiting from the expansion of the empire. First, the East India Company, remember? East India was one of the main beneficiaries. East India Company was like BlackRock of its time. Rings any bell? BlackRock right now is coming up with plans of how they can benefit the most from Ukrainian land that they becomes part of the empire. They're coming up with plans of how best to develop it. That's East India Company, making plans about whatever land that the British soldiers can conquer in India and Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia. That's East India Company. East India Company, BlackRock, Goldman Sachs. Same thing, same idea. Beneficiaries are very limited, but the rest of the population in fucking England during those golden colonial days, the average Joe in England was suffering. There was cleaning the 12-year-old boys were cleaning chimney 12 hours a day. Chimneys 12 hours a day, or picking pockets. Does that ring any bell? With all these lootings and this and that and the other that is going on within the cities of the United States, it reminds you of characters from Charles Dickens novels. That they were picking pockets, and it is what it is. This is empire. It just forces people into two classes: the extremely wealthy, who are benefiting from the expansion and maintenance of the empire, and the super poor who are the main, who bear the main cost of expansion and maintenance of the empire and none of its perks. That would be 95% the average citizens. I give you one example, one simple example, and I'm going to wrap this up. Mrs. Clinton and Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith is, we all know Mrs. Clinton, and imagine Mrs. Smith being just you know, an accountant for a small firm in Washington D.C. or in New York, and an accountant and clerk in some private firm in Washington D.C. or New York. Mrs. Clinton recently during the past few years, went into England. The fucking British gave her a royal treatment. A royal treatment. Oh, here is a honorary degree. Here is a royal treatment. We love you. Whatever. And why? Because Mrs. Clinton is, an influential person at the heart of the empire, in which the fucking British are a very junior partner. Is part of the coalition of the willing. The British are a very junior partner. They pick up the crumbs of the American empire's table, and they give a royal treatment to one of the instruments of creation and maintenance of Uncle Sam's empire. Royal treatment. Although she currently doesn't have any position, but because of her past activity that has benefited the fucking British by being junior partner in this empire, they still give her a royal treatment. Hopefully in the future she won't forget it, and when the empire expands even more, the British will get a little more crumbs. But then this is Mrs. Clinton being at the top of the political class in this empire, which nobody likes to admit, nobody likes to say. But then imagine Mrs. Smith, who's just an accounts clerk in an office of a small company in New York. She can't even afford to go to other parts of the empire. Forget about royal treatment. Because a lot of her money is going towards taxes that is expanded to maintain and expand the empire, a lot of her taxes, but also she has to squirrel away or save a little money on the side for the education of her children and for her own private health care, and for, squirrel away a little, save a little money and a little money beside the taxes to take care of herself and her family. Forget about, European vacation or African vacation or South American vacation. Mrs. Smith can't afford health care because her taxes are going somewhere else instead of going for health care. Because her taxes are going to expand the empire and not going towards her health care. So while Mrs. Smith is paying taxes, Jeff Bezos is making the real killing because he's the real winner of expansion of the empire, and Mrs. Clinton gets paid something on the side, or gets royal treatment in parts of the empire, but Mrs. Smith gets shit for the taxes that she pays. Therefore, Mrs. Smith is MAGA. It makes sense. Mrs. Smith has had enough of the empire because she's not benefiting from the empire. And no citizen of any empire has ever benefited from the empire. Only very few at the top benefit from an empire. The rest of the citizens are paying for subjugation of citizens of somewhere else. I'm sorry, I might be wrong. But historical evidence is pointing in this direction.